Kingdom Hearts has had many great villains over the years, ranging from your favorite flavors of Xehanort, original recipe, dark chocolate, vanilla, cookies and cream, and don't forget empty calories. And let's not forget Organization 13 and a plethora of other enemies. And speaking of Organization 13, I think Sora put it best when describing them with all of their infighting.
Not a very organized organization.
Just a quick FYI, I will be discussing major spoilers for the Kingdom Hearts series, so if you're not caught up on all the games and DLC, you might want to come back later. However, there's one group of villains that feels like they've been left to the wayside, even though they were the primary antagonists that started off our journey in 2002. Death comes for us all. The Disney villains, led by Maleficent, were some of the most fun to see on screen and to throw hands against. But as Kingdom Hearts kept going, it seemed to bring a lot of things people liked with it, but forgot about some of them going forward. And looking to the future of Kingdom Hearts, it's hard to see where these characters could even fit in going forward with the series. That's why I want a spotlight cast on these villains today, discussing what made these characters great inside the world of Kingdom Hearts, and talking about some possibilities concerning the Disney villain group that could bring them back to the forefront, whether this happens in the next installment of the series or further down the line. And which villains could they add to spice up the group going forward if they were to get the band back together? Either way, I don't think these characters should be given the short stick any longer. So the group, if you may have forgotten, consisted of Maleficent, Jafar, Captain Hook, Ursula, Oogie Boogie, and Hades. There were other Disney villains, but they didn't align themselves with Maleficent or even know about the group. So why am I even advocating for them, you may be asking, because Organization 13 was so much better than they were, right? Which is a fair question. The Disney villains, while some might just see them as an easy boss battle, and many didn't return in any significant way to the franchise, I think they were still amazing roadblocks for our heroes to overcome. Not just through battle, but through other aspects of their lives. Not only did they work well against the heroes, they played really well off of each other. Something I think Organization 13 lacked a bit. For instance, if you paired up any of these Disney villains in a scene together, you would always look forward to seeing how they would interact with each other, because in their own worlds they see themselves as powerful figures that don't play well with others. But now they were recruited into a group where cooperation was needed in order to achieve a more sinister goal. So the arguments and jokes they would make about each other, or even looking down on the actions of how some of the other villains failed in their goals, was intriguing because they don't know what it's like to work as a team, and couldn't see each other as equals, and they had always been solo acts. Whereas if you flip it over to Organization 13, I never got that vibe. Everyone had their own little cliques in the group, and if you put two members who didn't normally speak together, they would just discuss the objectives or mission. This is because the group was formed with many members already knowing about each other, and already knew how to function well in a group. Well, before some decided to try and stage a coup, but then ended up just rejoining anyway. I think the seriousness of Organization 13 was a good thing, but I missed the balance of seriousness with levity that was more prevalent in the Disney villain group. Obviously because they were fun Disney characters, but there was a good balance of sinister and fun. Whereas with the organization, it was all business, with only small instances of ever showing more of a silly side. Now, fun dynamics aside, what did they bring to the story that actually propelled the plot of Kingdom Hearts? Well, other than the obvious nature of them capturing the princesses and ruining the worlds with Heartless, Maleficent played a pivotal role in the first Kingdom Hearts, even though in the future she would come to do next to nothing. I think many people overlook this, so I'll say it. Maleficent completely blew Sora and Riku's friendship to hell for a time.
You see, it's just as I told you. While you toiled away trying to find your dear friend, he quite simply replaced you with some new companions. Evidently, now he values them far more than he does you. You're better off without that wretched boy. Now think no more of him and come with me. I'll help you find what you're searching for.
Yeah, of all the villains in the series, the Disney villain was the one who poisoned Riku against Sora, which added so much more to the story of the original Kingdom Hearts and the emotional side of the story. Riku now thinking that Donald and Goofy replaced himself and Kairi for Sora, and how that affected Riku for him to not just embrace the darkness, but to weaponize it against Sora and even try to turn his new friends against him. Yes, Sora and Riku were shown to be at odds at one time or another, but Maleficent propelled it to a point of nearly no no return. Something we don't get more of from her later in the series, unfortunately. As for some of the other villains, Hades is the entire reason Cloud even ended up meeting Sora. If Hades hadn't promised to help out Cloud in exchange for him joining the tournament and defeating Hercules, those two wouldn't have met each other. And it was fun to see a Final Fantasy character have actual dialogue with a Disney villain. And Captain Hook was also the entire reason Riku was even able to go and retrieve Kairi's body. Now, both of those may not be as crucial as Maleficent's role in everything, but the Disney villains were given roles and opportunities to not just be constrained by their respective film plots and be fodder boss battles. And on the topic of boss battles, while Ursula and Oogie may not have played pivotal roles story-wise, they had interesting boss battles that didn't just say mash your face into the X button for 5 minutes straight. Like with Ursula's cauldron malfunctioning when you used magic to knock her out, and Oogie's roulette of traps and Heartless, and then Sora having to pull a Shadow of the Colossus on Oogie Boogie and find all the weak points on his body. And these boss battles had a sense of urgency on a grand scale, fighting literal giant threats. Except for Jafar. Wait, you're telling me there's a giant genie in front of me, but you want me to go for the bird? I can do that.
I think I'm gonna have a heart attack and die!
While it may not have been Lingering Will or Yozora, they were a fun change of pace to the combat, and sadly after the first Kingdom Hearts, the decline had started to begin. In Kingdom Hearts 2, the Disney villains still had some fun boss fights, but other than Maleficent and Pete, who I'll get to in a few moments, all of the other new and returning Disney villains were relegated to follow your film script and don't play a bigger role than that. None of the Disney villains even commented on the bigger world at large, and Maleficent never clued them in either, or tried to recruit any of them. Pete did end up talking with Barbossa, but it ultimately led to nothing. Imagine if Pete had made a deal with Barbossa, and introduced him to Maleficent, and they told him about the other worlds and said Sora wasn't the only enemy, and filled him in on what they knew about the organization, so that by the time KH3 rolled around, and Barbossa was an ally, he could have given Sora what information Maleficent had on Xehanort due to her knowing about Xehanort since Birth by Sleep. But alas, the Disney villains in Kingdom Hearts 2 were just there for obstacles for Sora to beat up. Other than reviving Oogie for 2 minutes for him to be killed off again, Maleficent never even tried to recruit anybody else, new or old. It was great to see Pete screwing around with the other worlds that Sora and friends would visit, and him knowing about the events that took place in Kingdom Hearts 1. And he had arguably one of the funniest boss fights in the entire series. Plot-wise, even with the threat of Xemnas, Pete and Maleficent ended up helping Sora, albeit for their own reasons, and fought off enemies of Sora's, not once, but twice. While we didn't get a Maleficent revenge grudge match, it made sense that she was focused on using Sora as a tool to take down the organization, so I figured we'd fight her whenever Kingdom Hearts 3 came out. At least that's what little kid me thought at the time. Fast forward a few years, and through all of the entries, none of the Disney villains, including Maleficent, even bothered to try and remake the group with new members or even have a clear goal. Maleficent and Pete are just parroting whatever the organization members do now and aren't even good at it. So with what we just went over, they did place some significance into the grander plot to the Kingdom Hearts story, at least in the early days. But moving forward, what happens next with them? I can tell you what I'd personally like to see going forward, and that is the new and improved Disney villain group, which leads me to discuss which new members would be the best choices for a powerful and actual threatening group, not just to Sora, but to other antagonist factions that don't align with Sora. Let me just say real quick, I'm about to get into some spoilers for these respective shows, so if you don't want to hear this, you may want to skip to this part. New members that could be considered heavyweights for the group going forward, if Nomura and Disney decide to forgo the whole movie villains only thing, would be Bill Cipher, The Collector, and King Andreas. Also, if you've made it this far, may the subscribe button be your guiding key. Now, Bill Cipher, being a master manipulator of reality, can make such trippy and fun boss fights, and would be a genuine threat for Sora going forward. Bill definitely wouldn't follow Maleficent's commands, but if Maleficent freed Bill from being confined to Gravity Falls, but only to anchor him to their new base of operations, and promised to free Bill only after her goal was complete, well, he might play ball with her. With that level of strength and power, he'd also be a feared opponent to Xigbar/Lushu's group going forward as well. He'd be the most powerful of the Disney villains for sure, and Maleficent would need to keep him on a tight leash. He'd also add some of that levity I was talking about before, because as horrific as Bill can be, sometimes he can also be really funny. He could also be a de facto leader of the group, with tension building between Maleficent and himself. Bill could also want to recreate all the worlds Sora has ever been to into how he thinks they should be, and with his omniversal powers, that's completely within his power to do. He'd have Xehanort's plan, but on a much grander and more horrific scale. As for the Collector, Sora and pals would be dropped into the story before the Collector becomes good. Maleficent could manipulate this cosmic being into doing whatever she wants with her cunning and natural ability to lie through her teeth. She could say that if her plans succeed, the Collector will be able to play with whoever he wants for eternity. And imagine Pete having to babysit him and he's losing his mind everywhere he goes as the Collector is just constantly messing with him. Eventually, Sora could convince the Collector that what he's doing is wrong and he would eventually see the error of his ways, just like it was portrayed in the show. This would create more of a conflict within the new villains group with its members, but I'll dive more into that in a bit. Moving over to our Amphibia villain, not only was King Andrias a strong and formidable foe, and that's without his giant death machine, he went toe-to-toe with Super Saiyan Hu. But Andrias in a lot of ways has parallels to Riku, because he ended up losing his friends due to his own actions and lived with that regret. Only after Anne finally broke through to him emotionally, and well, literally, did he end up changing his ways. That would be something that was lacking in the original Disney villain group that Organization 13 did have, and that would be some of the members switching sides further down the story to help prevent whatever the final boss is trying to bring about. Imagine Andrias and the Collector joining Sora against an incredibly powerful foe, and even with those two, it's still a tough fight. Hell, imagine a reality-bending battle between Bill and the Collector. It would be like when we all gushed from watching Axel vs. Marluxia. Not only do these three bring the potential of fun boss battles and some exciting story beats, but being actual threats towards Sora and his friends, especially with how much stronger Sora has become, means that they wouldn't just be villains of the week. The duality of these characters also having many themes that are central to Kingdom Hearts is also a reason I think they should be added. As for other movie villains to round out the rest of the roster, there are plenty to pick from. And with Pixar's villains now available, there's even more. Syndrome would be a perfect parallel to Hero in Big Hero 6, with him wanting to become a hero when he was younger, but had his dreams crushed and became a villain. And with his scientific knowledge, he could be the gearhead of the new villains group, coming up with new ways to power up some of the older villains. Not only that, but everybody knows those data battles where you can refight organization members, but now they're way harder. Well, now you have a perfect way to integrate that for the Disney villains. You could have Sora find Syndrome's bunker, where he modified the powers of his colleagues but never got to fully implement it. Then Sora decides to investigate it, and boom, new data battles with ultra hard Disney bosses on par or even harder than the data battles we've had so far in the series. I think if they wanted to add more returning villains into the group to round out a few more spots after the new villains have been established, bringing back Hades would be a good idea because he could conjure up more characters who had been killed off in their own lore for Sora to either fight off or befriend. Heck, depending on how you want the story to go, Syndrome joining the group could be because of Hades. If you want it to take place after the first Incredibles, he could revive Syndrome and also give him the power to control the Heartless. And Syndrome can make himself even stronger and know exactly how to deal with Sora after watching footage of his fights. This might be a little much, but imagine gameplay-wise if this were to happen. Syndrome analyzes your gameplay as you play that installment of Kingdom Hearts, and depending on how you fight in the game, the machine that Syndrome creates is tailored to counter your specific gameplay, adding way more depth to the combat system, forcing the player to try new mechanics. Think of it like how amiibos get better over time by playing other players. And most importantly, above everything else, he would get rid of his cape so he doesn't get caught in a jet turbine this time. And as for bringing back some old faces, Hades could also revive Jafar. It wouldn't be the first time he's done it, especially because we never got the giant cobra as a boss battle, and that would make for a fun and epic fight if done correctly. There's also Ursula. In one of my other videos, I talked about how King Triton knew about Keyblade wielders and some of the wider lore of the series, and it was never addressed how or why he knew that. I'd also assume Ursula would have had access to this knowledge, and if that's the case, she could have information about the foretellers that she purposely withheld because she didn't think it was relevant, but now it is since they've returned, or she wanted to use that info as a bargaining chip with Maleficent. Now, there is one more villain, or should I say villains, that they could potentially add, especially again, the themes of this franchise mesh well to the world of Kingdom Hearts, whether you love love it or hate it, and that's Star Wars, by adding Darth Vader and Darth Sidious. Regardless of the likelihood of Star Wars getting in, I mean, I just talked about a bunch of Disney Channel shows that probably won't make it in. Their themes of light and dark and overcoming darkness and fighting to protect the light were done long before Kingdom Hearts was ever even a concept in Nomura's brain. And both Vader and Sidious would be more powerhouses to add to the already stacked team that I've been telling you about. And of course, if Terra were to meet Vader and learn about him, we would know how truly alike they both are with what they've been through in their lives. We'd also add to the greater threat of the Death Star destroying worlds that the villains could use to their advantage. Think about that. We've seen worlds fall to darkness, but to be completely eradicated, never to come back, that's something none of the Kingdom Hearts characters could ignore. This would be arguably the most powerful faction to ever exist in the series with these members, and would add a lot more unique gameplay mechanics to their respective fights. And with data versions being even harder, and having an in-lore reason for them to exist makes it even better. And all these villains do in some way, shape, or form brings something to Kingdom Hearts that is intrinsic to the series and what gives it heart, no pun intended. Whether a conflicted villain or a pure evil one, they all have something that could offer to the story and give Sora new challenges, not just physically, but emotionally to overcome, and would add fresh new faces for audiences to enjoy, and might even dip their toe into these series that they may not have even discovered or been intrigued with until experiencing it here in this franchise first. But with all that said, these characters have added depth to the world of Kingdom Hearts and not only added fun boss fights and memorable moments, but engaged audiences and propelled Kingdom Hearts into the juggernaut it has become today. When the game launched all the way back in 2002. To completely ignore and forget about them isn't something I want to see happen. There is so much potential from a storytelling perspective and implementing fun and harder boss mechanics that would amplify them from a gameplay standpoint as well. I do truly hope going forward the Kingdom Hearts team decides to rejuvenate these characters and give them a better purpose than what's been happening with them in the last few installments. But I'll just have to wait and see what happens, just like everyone else. But I can always hope. I'll always welcome a little bit of Disney villainy. Thanks for watching. This was me, just nathing out. Thanks for watching the video, and if you haven't gotten your fill of Kingdom Hearts lore, theories, and crossovers, check out some of my other KH content on screen now for your viewing pleasure. And as always, have an awesome day.